I'm Derek Higginbotham. As I said, I work at the Claros Group, where we do a lot of the strategic and regulatory consulting as banks are leaning into tech and as tech's trying to get into banks. Before that, I was running a bank called First Electronic Bank, one of the sponsor banks here, where we were actually able to be a very early mover into some AI for some risk management, thanks to Spring Labs and John, which is how I ended up here today. The point of today is to hear from some banks who have been able to spend some time really investing in AI already. I hope that the outcome of this session is that banks who maybe haven't had as much time or resources to put into AI will hear some good use cases and come out of this session feeling a little bit more equipped to make some calls on what things they can lean into and what they need to do as they do make that lean. So let's go down the panel and hear each of you guys intros.
Hi, I'm Brandon Thomas, Chief Data Officer at Zions Bank Corporation. Happy to be here.
I'm Josh Jun. I lead AI strategy within the commercial bank at KeyBank.
Hi, Wade Robinson. I'm the Chief Risk Officer for Square Financial Services, Inc., ILC Bank here in Utah.
And I'm Jay Budzik. I'm Senior Vice President over AI and ML model development and operations at Fifth Third Bank.
And can we get a little more intro? I think it's interesting how each of you came into being the person who's the AI person for your institution. You don't all have the same backgrounds. Can we do it one more time where you give a little bit more about who you are and maybe give some folks an idea of who they're even want to put onto the team?
Sure, I'll go first.
Yeah.
So I started at the bank in finance for the first 10 years in analytical roles, and then about 10 years ago moved into this data role. And I think I'm in the role because I came from a perspective of managing analysts in the company. I was really involved in those dark stress testing years that many of you in the industry will remember. And so that role gave me the opportunity to just see the company collectively and try to process what it's like to analyze all of our financials, what it looks like going through a recession and a forecast, just this analytical perspective that I bring from a finance.
Yeah.
So I started my career early on in just heavy math stats. I actually did medical research for a while and then pivoted over to banking. I did management consulting with a small boutique consulting firm that was acquired by KeyBank. So that's how I ended up in the role that I'm in. And I would say a lot of my background focused on working with a range of fintechs, regional banks, a lot of consumer-related strategies across the lending space in particular. And then when I got into Key, I made a transition over into the commercial bank.
Yeah, so to be honest, I was a little surprised that they asked this guy to come. And usually we're kind of against innovation for some reason, or at least that's how we're thought of. But as I thought about it, at least within my role currently today, model risk management is a function that I oversee, as well as some of the governance of the bank in terms of how we oversee different types of risks, how we quantify it, how we evaluate it. And as we look at artificial intelligence, obviously it's a huge opportunity, but there's big risks associated with it. And I think as we talk about that in the panel, it'll be something I can contribute to.
So I got my start in AI in the early 90s in school. So I did a PhD in AI and had a series of enterprise software startups leveraging AI to do various things, from help publishers generate more revenue and traffic to advertisers target ads. And my last one, we worked with banks to adopt machine learning models and originations, and had to learn how to navigate model risk management, how to navigate all of the kind of compliance concerns related to AI. And so when I was kind of wrapping up my time at the startup there, I was looking at developing another one, and I called up some of my former customers, and I kind of ended up at the bank. So it's been kind of an interesting experience to see things from the other side. From the inside as a startup founder, now I understand why things take so long.
Got it. I'm not an audio-visual technician, but we are picking up a lot on each other. Maybe we just spread out a little bit.
Sure.
Not sure if that's good engineering or not. Okay, well, let's start with a softball. The session today is where banks are seeing the biggest efficiency gains. Let's mix up the order and go backwards this time. But I think this will maybe be the most valuable question for everybody.
Sure.
I think a lot of banks here are going to be a bit smaller, and a lot of the FIs are a bit smaller and don't have as many bites of the apple to be trying different things. It's good to hear what's catching in institutions that have a bit more resources to put into it.
Yeah, so we really have a multi-pronged strategy around AI. We think of it in sort of three main pillars. One, AI for the employee, so getting knowledge workers productive, and then also our engineers more productive. So we've adopted co-pilots for software engineering that have really sort of moved the needle in terms of the number of tickets that our developers can close and the amount of code that gets written. So that's been great. But kind of the more challenging pieces are around how do we do AI for our customers and how do we do AI for our business processes, because at institutions like ours, we have to be careful about business changes and the risks that are associated with those. And so we've seen a lot of success in consumer underwriting, where we can leverage more data and better math to make more accurate risk assessments of consumers that are applying for various types of loans. Also, in our deposit marketing function, where we're using AI models to identify the consumers that are most likely to respond and deepen with us, because we want to form a long-term relationship with these guys and sort of see them use all the products. But we've also been investing pretty significantly in our customer service support function. How do we get our agents from human to superhuman by providing them with just-in-time information related to the conversation that they're having on the phone with a consumer. Looking at sort of streamlining our QA/QC of things like our disputes process, where there's a high degree of regulatory scrutiny associated with how we handle disputes, and we need to make sure that we're doing it in the right way every time. So the AI can help flag anomalies there. But we're also using AI in outbound calling, where we're contacting customers who are late on a payment and getting them to pay us for a loan that they're obligated to pay. And there we've seen things like a 50% increase in the right party contact rate, because we can deploy the robots all at the time when people are available. Instead of calling during their workday, we can jam 1,000 calls a minute through at 8 a.m. when people are generally available. So and likewise, the robots, the AI always does the disclosure at the front, never makes a mistake about the compliance pieces. The other thing that wasn't obvious to me from the outside is that our payments business, our back office operations business, our lockbox, we have around 20 million pieces of paper flow through the bank a month, where someone's looking at a statement or a letter, an opinion of value from an appraiser, and then typing the value into a system. A lot of that can be automated using AI. Of course, the issue is that it's not 100% accurate, and so we need to have processes to manage the risks of those inaccuracies along the way. So those are some of the use cases that we're seeing success in.
At Square Financial Services and kind of Block in general, where we have different business lines like Cash App and Square, where we've seen probably the most efficiency gains and where it's probably been adopted and implemented most is really around customer service and introducing chatbots to be able to answer basic customer questions and respond to them via email. And ensure that there's appropriate escalation paths for customer complaints, that type of thing. We've also seen it in the fraud space, in the risk management space, where we're able to monitor real-time, millions of transactions, suspicious behavior, being able to identify accounts for freezing of those accounts, or escalation for compliance review. And then, believe it or not, in one of the spaces that I directly oversee around model risk management, we've seen quite a few opportunities to automate that process. It's quite prescriptive in terms of the regulatory guidance that you use for model risk management, which I think can be a good and a bad thing. But in this case, it's allowed for quite a bit of automation in terms of looking at data, integrity of data, matching data, being able to even run models on the same data set or pull the same data set and run those. We've probably found, especially on high-risk models where there is a lot of involvement, probably upwards to a 50% increase or improvement in efficiency around the validation process. So they're just some of the few use cases that are used across the company.
Yeah, at Key, I would say a lot of what you've seen and heard so far have been the main focus for us. A lot of servicing-related tasks, a lot of back-office efficiency. I think the chart at the very beginning that John shared is very well aligned to where we're focused. I'll maybe answer another part of the question, which was around like how should smaller-sized companies be thinking about leveraging these technologies as a potential leapfrog opportunity. I would say in that space, it's vitally important that you bring the people with the technology capabilities that actually understand how to build and deploy and write the API functions into the business process that you're trying to affect. And that's been a piece that I think has been missing for a lot. I think if you think about traditional software development life cycles, you have a lot of business analysts and sort of intermediaries between the person with the expertise and the person with the technical capabilities. And I think that that's a paradigm shift that's going to be shifting a lot with Gen AI and just vibe coding in general. But you want to make sure that you're applying Gen AI to the right use cases. And to be able to do that, you have to actually understand where the business need and impact is. And I think that that's a piece going back to my prior management consulting days where I saw a lot of fintechs in particular struggle.
For Zion's similar multi-pronged approach, I mean, we've got some folks here today, but that have helped us lead this. But I would say for most of the employees in the company, they've got access to Microsoft Copilot tool. We've established a forum called Genovate, which allows employees from all over the company to participate, share best practices and ideas. And there's a lot of localized AI efforts happening that are leading to bigger opportunities. That's organic grassroots, just growing in the company. That's great. That's one angle. And then the second angle that we've been pursuing is very deliberate with our board of directors, with our senior executives. Where do we want to use AI? And that's been what comes naturally is the back office operations, and we're seeing that happen almost without trying. It's can you focus the company on customer and banker-facing opportunities to use AI is where we're finding it takes more effort, more business involvement. So far, what I'd say is it's been cautious around pursuing customer opportunities, but a lot of banker opportunities. So can we help them with sales enablement through prospecting? Can we speed up the turnaround time for processing a commercial loan? Or just can we speed up the time we take to review appraisals and speed up kind of that credit operations process? So we're not using AI to make credit decisions, but we're doing everything around it to speed up that process. That's where we're seeing a lot of early opportunities and successes.
Got it. I always find panels more interesting. We can get panelists arguing with each other, and I haven't been able to think about too many things that are that controversial. But at risk, maybe a couple of questions where at least you'll have some different opinions. Are there areas where people are treating this like problems as AI kind of problems, and they really ought to be not using AI? That it's really some kind of other automation, other kind of tool. Can you name some of the things where people are acting excited about AI and that may be pretty ignorant of them, and we can disabuse them of the mispairing?
I will say, like at Key, there's a big debate over like just bots. Like, should we be doing this with just general like process automation versus, using Gen AI? I will say, like in going back to my prior comment, even just a lot of people have deployed technology without fully understanding the underlying process that you're actually trying to impact, and
Right.
that I think is where you lead to a lot of collapse. And then I'd say the second big gap that I don't think a lot of like process automation has solved for is just the legacy data challenges, right? I think a lot of banks in particular have invested heavily in like structured data, data lakes. A lot of what we're talking about now with like loan document processing is very unstructured data. So you now have a new set of technology problems and workflows to work through. But I think that that's the underlying issue is a lot of times just the data, not necessarily the technical solution.
I think there's also this sort of gap in terms of how good we can get it, right? So, people sort of think, okay, let's just kind of plug the AI in, and in a few months we'll have it fully automated. And, so when we're doing these business cases, think about processing those documents, right? You could hire a firm to do that for you on an offshore basis, and you get a per document unit cost or whatever. Like, in order for the AI investment to make sense, it has to hurdle, right? So if I'm going to invest, $1 million in sort of standing up a team to do a thing, and the unit costs after that investment period aren't less than what I had before when I was just sending it to the job shop, then why did I do it? So, and it's kind of, and part of that sort of hinges on, can I get it to 100% accuracy so I can through process the thing? Because if I can't, then I've got to have a human review function to satisfy my risk managers. And so that just adds another layer of cost. So I think part of what we're learning as we deploy AI in various use cases is that there are layers of costs that were unaccounted for initially that we have to go back and sort of fix. And, and then that sort of raises the bar for the accuracy on the AI. And we're not kind of quite there yet where we can just sort of let it run full throttle and through process everything without sort of getting ourselves in trouble. I think kind of, it's also, we're sort of early enough in the adoption cycle that it's sort of unclear where the issues are gonna come up until we try it.
One of the areas that has been under discussion a lot is around model development. In a place like Block, almost all of the credit decisions are automated. And if you can get some efficiencies and multiple iterations within a short period of time on model development, getting that 0.5%, 1% increase in approval rates means a significant impact to the bottom line. And so, although we haven't gone there yet, there's a lot of discussion around it, and how quickly you can move, and how does that fit into the governance process. And so, that would be one area where I would say use caution before you go. There isn't, from my understanding, really any kind of regulatory guidelines associated with that, other than what's actually out there and exists today. So I think that's one of my concerns. I believe there's opportunities, but it's because it has such an impact, whether it's on bias, fairness, related to underwriting, relating to the decisions that are made, customer escalations, complaints, et cetera. I think you could get yourself in a whole heap of regulatory and compliance issues and potential credit risk going down that path without having the appropriate controls. So I just think that that's one of the areas that use caution.
I'll pile on there because you put a chatbot in front of customers, they can say anything they want, and so it's kind of like unclear to me, at least, how you demonstrate 100% coverage of the input space in a situation like that. And so you kind of have to sort of be creative about generating enough testing, generating enough examples, bringing in experts that know how to break these things. I think so that you can demonstrate to the regulator that you tried, because there are too many possible inputs to test them all.
I was going to pile on where you're going. I think what remains to be seen is, like, what do the customers want? If I talk to my kids, they're like, yeah, give me a fully agentic bank, I'm good to go. Or I was in the grocery store line the other day and I was watching someone write a check, and I was just thinking, wow, we're still writing checks at the grocery store line, or someone's helping someone with the tap. So I think there's more work to be done about what our customers want, and then recognizing you've got a broad base of customers and age groups, and I hear solutions from vendors like, we've got you covered, not to worry. And I think they're sometimes aimed a little short-sighted, recognizing some of our more affluent, wealthier customers are often a little bit older, maybe not quite as ready to embrace an AI world. So,
are you getting blowback yet? Like, I think you guys at the other end, you spoke more to uses where you're actually doing customer-facing uses. Yeah. Are you getting significant blowback, or can you measure? Have you quantified it?
Well, in the chatbot we look at capture rates. So how many questions get answered before escalating, without escalation to an agent. And we're able to sort of make a ton of progress there just by making the matching better to canned responses. So we're not generating, the responses using a generative system, but we're sort of matching on a more accurate basis a set of, predetermined conversation flows. So that's been helpful for us to manage sort of those risks of, inaccuracies or hallucinations, happening that could be reputation damaging. I think kind of in the calling with our voice agents, we deliberately sort of went slowly at the beginning because we were afraid that people would not like that a robot was calling them instead of a person. But when we ran the kind of survey research at the end of our pilots and asked which experience did people prefer better, we didn't do it that way. We had an A/B test and we asked them all to say how much would they recommend the experience to someone else. We found that the agentic experience was preferred by the customers, which was kind of surprising to me. And we were very open about disclosing, hey, you're talking to a robot, not a person. But people preferred it because they could get through the conversation better. And honestly, maybe the agents that we had hired weren't that great.
Well, I think that that's a really important piece, right? Like with a lot of agentic and Gen AI coming in right now, you have observability platforms and evaluation platforms. You're capturing 100%. Like, who here's ever listened to 100% of the recordings in your contact center?
Absolutely.
Nobody's ever done that, right? So I think you just have a very different lens through which you can apply those types of evaluations. But I agree. Like, I think that there's a question of what threshold am I trying to go after? Some peer-reviewed literature that says X, Y, and Z about LLM as a judge and other, cosine similarity components, or like, how well is my contact center actually performing and resolving my client issues?
Yeah.
I don't think we have that type of data, but I think that's the right litmus test.
I'd love to see a model risk management framework for the people, the models inside of people's heads.
No, you wouldn't.
I think we may have time to come back to model risk management or other. But there's one question I want to make sure we do, and I'm not sure how close we are to the end here. So for the use cases where you've actually been able to get objective results and really measure the impact, can you share a best win or a most surprising win, and also a total dud?
So I'll go with a win. So we just did a model that incorporated data from our deposit base in the underwriting process for credit card. And we were able to bring in a whole segment of customers that we would have always said no to because we didn't have sufficient data. So the credit bureaus often don't have information related to graduate students that just moved here or people that are from non-traditional backgrounds that haven't used credit before. So we're really proud of that increase in our ability to serve our customer base, especially in LMI communities. So that's one big win. In terms of a dud, I'd say it's not necessarily a dud, it just took so long. It's like kind of ridiculous. We started to translate some of our materials into multiple languages so that we could better serve the communities that we're in. And my goodness, like the number of back and forths with the outside counsel and making sure that the language was right, and even though we used the AI to translate it and everyone was pretty confident, it just it took quite a lot longer than we had ever expected to get it through all the various risk management processes and out into the world. But now that it's there, it's done, and we can do the next one.
At least on our side, I would say one of the biggest wins is really on the Cash App side in using AI to identify customer preferences and be able to do targeted offers to those individuals based upon their usage of the product, risk profile as well, or tendencies based upon what device they're working off of, where they're accessing it. So I think being able to increase conversion rates on the various products where this has been used to target individuals, I think has been a big win. In terms of a dud, I don't know if it's really a dud. Sometimes as you're kind of trying to iterate or vibe code associated, using these tools, We tried to do some things with our quality assurance our program in developing certain types of rubrics to do certain testing and to be able to pull data that would give us the right type of sample or right type of or customer interaction or sample of a transaction where it was kind of just a dud. I think it was maybe just not enough iteration and enough work on it or understanding of the data tables of where to get the data and make sure that it was actually accurate and that we're testing the right things, which I think is a problem that I think everybody faces, especially as this has been democratized across multiple groups that have access to these tools and may not understand the underlying data and how it connects together. So that's just one example.
I mean, building some agents that can just do document understanding. I mentioned this appraisal one early on. Word's gotten out organically about just what it can do, and now we're getting calls saying, oh, hey, I have a similar use case in field exam, or I have a similar use case here and there. So I would say just those really basic agents that can consume a document, put a chat on it feature to ask questions, create knowledge bases, those would be early great ways in your company to just get started with this idea of a reusable component. We talk about it a lot in our space. But what can we build that we know is going to get reused over and over and over again? And we've even thought about that maybe as a metric to think about as we decide what to work on next. Like which next use case is already half-baked, half-cooked, because we have most of the agents we need sort of angle to think about deciding what to do, in addition to what our business priorities are and everything else like that. So.
I would say for me, like the biggest learning is it's not always about an efficiency play. One of the biggest learnings that I've had is the servicing teams who oftentimes know your most complex commercial clients the best are at the best position to actually cross-sell and upsell those exact same clients. So taking the efficiency gain is not always the best for your business case. Sometimes you need to be thinking about how do I reallocate that human capital, which has been, I think, a really interesting learning on our side.
When we looked at it, just throw this out there for folks, we thought about a 4-box of risk and impact and kind of tried to start with the low risk, high impact ones. So that could be like kind of an exercise to go through is sort of where's the, and you could take risk to mean model risk, reputation risk, execution risk in terms of getting it done. But you want to pick something that's like kind of relatively easy to do, that's going to have a relatively big impact. And so if you just get the appraisal values out accurately, like you could really sort of drive an efficiency in the back office. And it's not customer facing, so there's less of a regulatory burden associated with it. There's a human in the loop, so model risk is going to be happy with it. So you can kind of pick your battles and go with what has the impact.
I've got a self-serving question I want to ask while I have you all. So my own personal passion project lately has been how do we help community banks and really community-focused banks be more relevant players? And I'm talking not just by size, but business model, where really the thing that they do is relationship management. Most of these institutions do not have a significant IT department. They don't have data resources. So if you could shift paradigm for a second and give some words of advice of how do those folks actually lean into this movement?
I mean, from my perspective, if I were you, I would find the best in breed partners to work with that are delivering excellent services. I mean, there's one of them sponsors this conference, and they have the benefit of scale across multiple customers and can invest in the data science and sort of compute resources that are required to get these use cases up and running. And it can be a very cost-effective way to go in terms of getting something up and running with a minimal internal staff. So I think, and be careful about who you choose and kind of make sure that they've got that base of knowledge to work from. But I think that could be a really productive way to go.
That's great advice. I mean, I would add, who do you want to be? Who are the customers you want to have? What's your long game thinking? We talked about that last night a little bit. I think that's a great way to think about it, and then find a partner that aligns with that. Like if you're going after small business, well, which partner is great at small business solutions? And instead of just taking that AI hammer and figuring out which nail to smash, align it with your strategy, and then ask which partners can help you.
Yeah, I think you need to think a lot about like organizational structure and culture at a smaller size company and find the right talent and really empower them. I think that that's probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I would give to smaller companies, because you have limited capital to bring in the right talent. So you want to make sure the people you have are going to work collaboratively and solve a novel problem. I mean, if you think about really the point in history that we're at, this is a very powerful and innovative technology that is going to change a lot of things. A lot is shifting, and you need to make sure that you have the right set of stakeholders that are empowered to actually action. And I think if you set that up correctly and you have the right leadership support at a smaller company, you could really leapfrog for sure.
In a past life, I was a product manager for a bank, and so it wasn't anything involved in risk. And I think one of the challenges, especially around relationship management, is understanding the profitability of your customer and where you want to invest and deepen that relationship, right? Whether you're going to invest human resources, et cetera. So I think investing, whether it's through a third party, in helping you understand your data, and again, making that data available in such a way that you can do the type of analysis that allows you real time or short periods of time understand customer behavior as well as customer profitability, so that you can actually then focus your limited resources that you have on those companies, small businesses, individuals, et cetera, that bring you cross products or what type of products you use as a hook, whatever, for those customers, I think would be very important, because for a small institution or a small bank, a small business or one customer could mean a significant proportion of your overall profitability, right? And sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it's not. But if you don't have the resources to do the kind of the work and the data and understand that product management, most likely would require a third party to come in and help you with that. But I think that would be key.
And you can, sorry if I could jump, you can educate the resources you have. There's a lot of great, there's a lot of great tools that are available. The LinkedIn platform is one we're using. There's a lot you can do to just educate your existing workforce. The universities, including the University of Utah, have some great candidates that are coming out that are in the more affordable range than if you're going after a senior data scientist with 5-10 years of experience. I just would encourage you to also just ask how you can develop the talent within. I think we've seen at our company a lot of people make incredible strides just by starting to explore and play with it and bring forward great ideas that don't have a background in technology, but they figured it out.
How are y'all thinking about what you're in-housing and what you're contracting for? And we have a lot of sellers and a lot of buyers in the room right now, and you all have kind of bumped into that decision in your comments.
I will say a lot of the biggest players don't always have the best answer for solving for things like model risk and like explainability and interpretability, no matter how much they claim that they will. That has been, I think, a challenge. That's been something that we've recently decided to in-house because we just lack trust in that. And I think, just back to my point earlier, I think it's just such a fast-moving area that any large company that's made a strategic investment in that specific space, it's going to evolve in the next 18 months in a substantial way. So that's at least where I'm seeing that play out. I would say where we're bringing in a lot is like new operating models around like LLM ops and just how do we partner with our technology teams. That's been a partnership for sure. And then observability and evaluation is certainly something that I would encourage everyone to not build themselves.
Not build themselves.
Not build yourself. Yes, do not. I tried. It's terrible.
I mean, we work with a lot of third parties on the platform side. Obviously, we don't want to sort of build our own platforms. So, but a lot of our decision making around build versus buy has been related to time to market and time to impact, and how quickly we can get either a new vendor through our third party risk management process. Versus an existing vendor who has a capability that could be sufficient that will allow us to generate that impact sooner. And so where we're investing using our own resources, is really in the sort of white space that exists between the solutions that are available from the large technology companies and the offerings, the vertical offerings that are focused on our space. Sort of that residual space where we see that we have an advantage with our data because of our footprint and the number of households that we have. We don't want to share that data. We want to keep it and use it to our advantage. Or where we have a unique set of problems that haven't been addressed by an industry solution. So for example, I'm not aware at least of anyone who really does appraisal document extraction for a living. And so we kind of have to build that, right? So that's kind of how we've been thinking about it is where do we put our bets to yield the highest financial outcomes, either in cost saving or revenue generation, that we couldn't address using third parties, and then where are there best in breed third parties that we're already working with that have capabilities that we can leverage so that we can get to the impact faster.
But if anyone could build a full end-to-end supply chain risk review process partner, that would be fantastic.
Right,
Please
exactly. Right.
Say that again one more time.
A full supply chain risk review process end-to-end. If someone wants
Seriously.
to build that for us,
Yeah.
we're happy to talk with you. But
I will say one thing, and I don't know, it's been an epiphany, and I know you want us to fight, but I'm actually going to take this side. I think that a lot of the components that sit within model risk are actually just the best practices for building and deploying
100%.
models, right? Like, hire a good product owner who actually understands like what you actually need to have, and think about like where this could fail for the end user. And honestly, you're going to find yourself like 60% of the way there, and then you add a little bit of math and you're fine. But I would say if you really look at a lot of the frameworks, it's just 101 stuff that a lot of people overlook or just say, hey, I can get access to this API and just immediately get this cool demo going. Like, yeah, I've seen a million demos. There's a reason why everybody's struggling to get into production.
I got my, the first document extractor I worked on, I did over the weekend, you know? And I was like, oh, this is so awesome. It works on 12 examples. And I was just super psyched. And then we tested it on 100,000 examples, and I think I got about a 20% accuracy rate, right? So what frameworks like the OCC 2011-12 and the Fed SR 11.7 do is make you prove it up so that you don't make a mistake and put something that looks like it's working really well because you looked at a dozen examples out into production, and then you kind of fall on your face. So I couldn't agree more.
I would encourage everybody to actually go and read those documents, because very small portions of that are actually related to that sort of like mathematical, like how do you evaluate? Like, what's your strategy? Do you have the right people?
Right.
Like, what is the risk assessment framework that you're bringing to the table?
Right.
Tools aren't, like third-party tools are not going to solve that. Like, you as an organization need to actually understand how you're going to address those. And I think that's why a lot of my answers up here have been around people, process, human capital, those themes. Like, that's where this breaks.
So I see a shift towards, what third parties you would use to what type of, model or, risk framework that you would use to be able to implement this. And we haven't cracked the code, right? I would say Block is jumped all in creating a platform that basically via API brings in an open source different tools, different systems, different third-party systems to be able to bring that and leave it at the fingertips of the end user. And there is some governance structure and some committees where any type of new development that's going to be deployed has to go through a review from compliance, information security, some risk folks as well, and legal. But at the same time, how you identify those to make sure that they go through the pipeline for review, that's a struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a real issue because it is so democratic in terms of who has access to the tools. They can then just go in, upload a request. It's pulling. They can enable different engines to come in and different third-party tools where there's an API that's been built. They can pull in all that data, both internal and external. And I've looked at it, I've done multiple tests myself, and sometimes it's just absolutely amazing the information and the end product that you get. And then you ask it to go a little bit more, and then you break it, right? Yeah. And then it just comes back with information that is highly inaccurate. And so that top of the funnel from a governance perspective, I think is very important. And I'll be honest with you, we haven't cracked the code as well. Even though we have things like, fairness and bias audits, person in the middle type of, a human in the middle to review certain output. That's kind of after the fact. To me, it's really about how you capture at the beginning of the funnel.
Okay, you may have already been answering this, but I'm going to ask it in a little different way. One thing that we see when we're consulting clients that are trying to grab onto different products is that they'll get really excited because they saw a really great demo.
Right.
And it can be really hard for the kind of the non-professional AI evaluator to actually look past that. It seems to be pretty easy with current tools to develop a really cool looking UX model, and if you run it on a perfect limited data set, it works well every single time. And that's how all the demos go, and that's really exciting for most of the consumers. And then it goes badly. I think many of these actually don't give the lift that they were expecting for. So any tips for the institutions that don't have a U to do better in those demo meetings and getting actually a really good read of what they're going to get?
Oh, that's a great question. So,
I'm going to leave it to these guys.
I don't
have the answer on that.
No.
Or even an opinion.
So, you got to ask them about the volume of tests that they've run. Sort of what evidence do they have that shows that the outcome that they're claiming they can do will actually occur on a sort of regular, consistent basis, and not just for them or some academic data set, but for you, right, in your specific situation. And so you can structure POCs where you have a vendor come in and, who's made a claim, and then sort of get data and then to them and then have them run a test and have kind of a bake-off with multiple vendors if you want. That's a way to sort of manage this risk. But even doing that takes a lot of effort. And so upfront, if you're kind of you can see them have examples of case studies working with similar sized institutions where there's a real outcome that you can talk to a customer about their experience. If you can see that they're intimately familiar with the data, that they've actually taken seriously the idea of model risk management and the testing that's required for a regulated institution to adopt these things, then you can maybe have some confidence at the front end to get into the POC process, to then go prove the metrics that you would need to get comfortable to do a real rollout. But it's sort of setting up the ramp up phase where you're taking relatively low risk and low investment steps to vet it out at the beginning before you're sort of really obligating your company to invest to the level that would be required for a full rollout.
I maybe take a different angle. I mean, I would ask, what is the customer experience you want? Have you mapped that out? Do you have a plan? Or what's the operational process flow that you want to have happen? What's the data you want to have available when this is done? Often in my experience, I've seen that we jump to what's the technology, and all the technology is going to solve it and not address some of those root issues that led to the frustration. And so I would love to see some acknowledgement by the vendors that there's that work that needs to happen, and that their solution isn't going to fix all of the political, operational, whatever issues are happening within the company, and that work needs to be done first. And that you can do that now in advance, and then engage vendors with these clear outcomes you want. You're ready, and then ask, okay, can you fulfill this? Yes or no? Have a really productive conversation up front so that there aren't letdowns.
That was great. Okay, we're getting the signal. Is there any last words of a lesson learned or that is eating at your soul that you want to get out?
Set expectations low. Especially on the timeline piece.
I'd say go explore. Be brave. It's okay to break a little glass.
Be brave with low expectations.
I didn't add mine to low expectations.
No, I think that this is a really interesting time. I innovate, leapfrog, the barrier to entry has shifted, and I think that that's a really interesting time for a lot of people, and you should grab that by the horns.
Yeah, I'd just say run until you get tackled, but make sure you have the governance in place to, as a backstop, to do the tackling if you need it.
From the risk manager. Run until you get tackled. Okay. Well, thank you guys. This was great.
Thank you.